Yay. Awesome. Thank you. Let me know when you're ready for me to call this baby to order. We're good. All right. We have a quorum, so we're going to go ahead and begin. It's probably 6:06. And it's still sun shining outside. Isn't that nice? If only it was shining when I got up.
Right? What was that about?
Anywho, welcome everybody. I'm glad you all are here. If we could go around the room and say our names, and that way we can get a good representation of who is here and perhaps who is missing as well. I'm Sally Kimmel.
I'm Jessica Smith.
I'm Mark Mobley.
Linnea Yana.
J.D. Brown.
Marissa Chastain.
Stephanie Reitz. Tatiana Van Russo.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. We've got our February minutes were emailed out to us. There's also a hard copy here in front of us. Does anybody have any discussion or changes to the February minutes? Do I have a motion to accept the February minutes? Linnea moves to do so. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mark seconds. If we're good with accepting the minutes, we can say aye. Okay, and with the thumbs up. The cottage, we vote thumbs up. Yeah, okay, so I get stuck in that. Yes, so we have accepted our February minutes. Thank you, folks. Farewell to Montu. Montu's last day here with us is come and gone.
Yeah, his last meeting, and I think he's out of town. But I do have a card that we
great.
started, so I'm gonna pass this around. If everyone could sign it, that'd be great. We can have a book for him. He shows up, well, you know, gift him, and if not, I'll mail it.
Thank you. Yeah, Montu's been a great participant and member. And we have new member interviews on March the 24th. Those of you who signed up to help out with that are Mark, Jessica, Francis, and Matt. Just giving you a friendly reminder there. Do you have any updates on that new member interview situations?
Yeah, they're scheduled for the 24th. They're virtual. Everyone's got the meeting invite for that. And all of our applicants have been notified of that. And our recruitment committee has their applications to review ahead of time. So, yeah.
How
stay
many?
tuned.
How many folks?
So we have 4 applicants and 2 vacancies. So.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm going to hand it over to staff for real and just see what you guys are up to.
Few things. So the red base, which is our last piece of the art for the new arena that was installed a couple weeks ago now. And so that is in. Next time you're at the arena, you'll be able to see it, sit in the chairs and enjoy it. So it's a great piece in the flagpole about it. Yeah, so stay tuned for possibly a ribbon cutting or some type of event for all the art. Because now all those, there were 3 pieces of art for the arena, the 2 murals and the sculpture, and they're now all installed. So also we had our lantern parade on Saturday. How many people went to lantern parade? Show of hands. Yeah, great. Of course, we had our artists. We had done that call for temporary light installations. And so we had 4 groups that did wonderful art installations. I did a post on Instagram with some photos. And I'll send out a link once we get all the official staff photos from our department of the event, because there's just wonderful pictures and pictures of people interacting with them. So there was Maria Nissan did this light portal thing that was like a great little photo booth with flowers that you could stand in. A lot of folks were getting their picture taken with it. Cindy Jarrell and her team did a giant owl that was amazing. That had
6-7 feet tall.
yeah, huge,
Yeah,
massive owl with disco ball like eyeballs, and it made owl sounds. They had a speaker And she said she found a Spotify playlist of owl sounds. I had no idea such a thing existed, so I'm really excited that that's a thing. And so that was great. Catherine Melcher, who's a professor at UGA, she did this fantastic piece in the tree with these glowing orbs that were programmed to mimic the flickering of fireflies. So it
Very specific.
yeah, very specific, the native firefly to this, this area. So I love the science and research and all that stuff. It was really cool. And then, of course, the Athens Puppet Collective, which is a group of 3 ladies, did this amazing little puppet show mushroom called the Glow Shroom. It lit up and it also had a screen, so, and some shadow puppets. So kids could go inside and do shadow puppets or sit outside and watch the puppet show. It was just a fantastic.
There was a line of children waiting.
Yeah.
Inside the mushroom. There was a line almost the whole time.
Yeah.
Kids patiently waiting for their turn to play inside the mushroom.
Yeah.
Was it bigger than last year, you think? I mean,
Oh, yeah, it grows every year. Definitely more people.
Great weather too.
Yeah, the weather was
I'll bet it wasn't
fantastic.
like this because
Yeah.
it was such a deep night out.
It was a great night.
Because it could have been like this, right?
Yeah, right, I know. It was great.
Like,
It was very conducive to being outside.
I'm so grateful.
So I'll send out a link to some more photos and stuff so y'all can see them. But it was really fantastic and our artist did such a great job. We also had a couple of our staff members here at the Linen House and a bunch of volunteers did this fantastic, they created this apparatus and performed it. It's a big caterpillar with lights on it, so it had a big face. And how many people? Yeah, it had several people in a line. And they just walked around blind in this caterpillar. And it was just great, just dancing, and it was a big hit. So it's really fun to see.
We had musicians where we had UU drummers again, and then also a harp player.
Yeah.
We had set up a little tableau in the woods for a woman.
Which was super dreamy.
Very ethereal, mystical.
So yeah, so that was,
Great job.
that was great. We still have our call for Bishop Park pedestrian gates. That's open until this Friday at 5 o'clock. If you know people who do welding or anything like that are local, I know we definitely have some local folks that can do a project like this, and I'd love to see more local applicants for that. So make sure those folks know. We've already completed the first part of selection for the Art for Linen Town, and the follow-up is scheduled for later this month where we review the proposals. Thank you to Linnea and Ian, and Francis and Matt were the other 2 that were on the selection panel. Thank you for doing that. It's harder, right, than you think. It's really hard. I'm always so glad I don't have to do it because you know, scoring artwork is really challenging. And whether you know a lot about art or you don't, I don't think it really makes a difference. It's really challenging to do, but it's very important way to participate. So thank you guys for doing that. A little update about art benches. I had a meeting with our SPOST team, a lot of the project managers to talk about the individual projects that we're considering for the art benches. And so what we're working on now is they're kind of evaluating the sites for their individual projects to see how these things can kind of fit in to the projects and what kind of support they would need, whether we need to add a concrete pad or whether it can be, built onto the original infrastructure plan for the project, that sort of thing. So once we have all that information, we know that there is a space for a bench or 2 on these sites, and what it would cost to supplement that budget. If we need to supplement the budget, I'll come back and do a bigger presentation for y'all and give you an idea of which projects we're considering these things for, how much money we're going to be adding to the project budgets to support it and kind of, giving just a big recommendation for, we're gonna do these projects and it's gonna cost this much money kind of thing. And then we'll go from there. So that'll probably happen in the next couple of months or so, depending on how things go. And then once, after I present it to you, it'll go to the mayor and commission, and get their evaluation. So that's a little bit about, just some projects. We'll have a bunch of calls for art coming up in the next few months as well. One for the Costa Building, community center murals, Morton mural. We have a few things coming up. So, I'll give those updates at our next meeting. But one project that's coming up that we're discussing right now, and I'm really excited about it, and I'm sure some of y'all will be excited about this too, but East Side is getting a library. It's our SPLOST 2020 Project 25. The site has been selected on Barnett Shoals Road, pretty close to the new section of the Greenway that just got finished over there in Cars Creek area. So that's going to be a really fantastic addition to that side of our community, to have this beautiful public library. The building itself is really gorgeous. I'll show you some of the plans for that in my presentation. But I met with the design team, and we discussed some sites just within the schematic where art could go. And then taking those into account, I did a presentation for that project's user group to discuss art. Now, the user group for this project is made up of a lot of library staff members and board members and people that do a lot of programming for the library. This is sort of, they basically advise on the project as a whole. I haven't been part of all of those conversations, but essentially what I think is really lovely, their kind of, I guess, the overall theme for this project that they really want conveyed through the art and just through the building itself is storytelling, telling our stories, whatever they may be. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to think about. So, but anyway, I just want to kind of go through and show you what was all discussed for them. And some of this I'll go through really fast because some of it's like kind of the stuff that's in orientation about public art process and things like that. And of course, I start all my presentations. So agenda, what is public art? Kind of going through our public art process, just the general goals and criteria. The budget for art for this project is $60,000. That's helpful to know. And of course, some of the things we discussed with the user group is library operations, right? What goes on in the library? I mean, what doesn't go on in a library? It's a very public-facing space. It's used by people of all ages, people of all backgrounds. Some people go there, obviously there's information and media and all those kinds of resources, but there's all kinds of programming, workshops and classes and, meeting rooms and, people that just come to use the internet, people that just come to use the bathroom. I mean, there's a lot of people coming and going and just from all walks of life. So, having something that really speaks to a wide variety of folks is important. And of course, something that doesn't obviously interfere with any of the programming or anything that's going on in library operations. Some of the themes we talked about, again, themes with the library, it's really endless because there's so many subjects and things and books and literary references and things like that. Or just, overall promoting literacy, which is really important, learning, but also themes of local history and community And again, you know, in talking with the user group, they really wanted to kind of drive home that idea of storytelling in this whole process. So here is a rendering of what the library will look like. I think it's a really cool looking building, right? Gorgeous. It's mostly, if you'll see, you know, it's mostly glass, like, you know, on 3 sides here. So the facade isn't really something that, you know, we could put art on. However, you know, there's some, start here. So there's some walls that they've identified on the inside that would be great for murals, especially like B and C, that are up high and really visible and that wouldn't have the same, wear and tear. So she's living, okay. Right, there's some walls, of course, it's weird to see it all white like this. It's not gonna work. But of course, a majority of the walls are gonna be glass, the ones that are exterior, because it's like all windows. But there are these kind of high up interior walls when you go back.
Is it like 1 story?
Yes, it with the really high, ceilings. Yeah. So like, here, but this is the entry point. This is the back. And so the back here is mostly like offices and the stuff that's not, it's public facing. And then this is like all. This is like the treatment area. This is, the meeting here. So basically, the walls here kind of face out, you know, face the front of the building. So if we were coming up to the building, you'd be able to, you know, perhaps see the murals inside, which is nice of that interior, exterior. And I gave showed some examples of library murals. There's a huge tradition of murals in libraries, whether they're public libraries, university libraries, you know, elementary school libraries. It's just a great place to put imagery and illustration and add some color. The other area that was discussed, kind of hard to see here, but this is the exterior programming here. And so this is the front of the building here, with the parking lot. So this would be just kind of side of your entrance. But, you know, it's not super clear exactly how much outdoor programming there will necessarily be. And that may not be an area that's, you know, I'm sure a lot of folks are just going to hang out there because it's a place to sit and, yeah, so some of the things we discussed for the outdoor area is maybe doing a 2D mural-like treatment on seating like this, something like this, or something more sculptural, could be fun. But we also talked about the benches as well. You know, this could be potentially a spot for a couple of these painted benches. Now, you know, discussing these things with the user group, they really felt strongly about the murals, wanting to go that route. We definitely want to kind of do one or the other and not try to do multiple projects for this site. We've done that with other projects and it's a lot, and we have a lot of projects. So we definitely want to keep this kind of one project. One thing I thought could be a possibility is, if we had a muralist that was selected to do these interior mural walls, they could potentially, you know, do, a corresponding bench on the outside that maybe carries over some of the same, you know, design to kind of. So, you know, the user group felt strongly about murals. I wanted to present this to you all and see if you wanted to, if you agreed with that recommendation to pursue that. I want to do a little bit more, have a little bit more discussion about exactly how, where we would put those murals and how we would do them and how we would use that budget. Because it is a slightly bigger budget than just doing one, strip of wall. It's a big, we could probably do multiple walls with that budget. But there's a few different ways we could approach it. So that's something that, I want to have some more conversations with our user group and the design team, moving forward. But like I said, I want to get y'all's thoughts about, that option as being the recommendation.
Maybe just to clarify, whether we fit inside the house or the outside.
Or doing something on the outside, yeah.
But we could do the murals with a corresponding,
With like a,
like
the benches, yeah.
I like
That would
the,
be a way to
like the
kind of,
focus inside, but then have just a little bit of.
yeah.
Could
One
you do
thing-
multiple benches or just one bench?
That's a good question. We kind of have to figure out the budget, like what's needed for them, and if they would need any support. But I could see potentially doing more than one and still doing murals.
Are we talking about benches that are also usable for transportation? I mean, are these benches just for people gathering, or are these benches also for people waiting for buses?
No, the benches are not bus shelters.
Okay.
I want to be very clear about that. Bus shelters are a totally different thing. These are just covered benches, just a place to chill, just a place
And I
to.
just want to add that, correct me if I'm wrong, this is also in proximity to the greenways. So one of the cool things about the site that they selected is that you could ride your bike to the library and hang out there. So even if, there could be artistic benches, right, from this avenue, but there will likely be some other seating out there, because they're definitely gonna put some
Right.
seating outside, because they know people are gonna gather. Imagine riding your bike and stopping to get in the shade and go and use the restroom or hang out in the library, then get back on your bike and ride on. So that is something that we'll also see, like people can take the bus, they can drive their car, they can feasibly walk, and they can ride their bikes. So I love that about
Yes.
this opportunity.
Will the bench come out of the $60,000 budget, like the actual bench
Yeah,
itself?
so if you're adding these kind of benches, yes. As far as the seating whatever seating they have planned already for this area, if they're setting up some kind of little, like a concrete little slab walls or something like that, that has nothing to do with our budget. That's
That
just-
comes out of the construction budget, it doesn't touch the art budget.
So would it be a consideration to do like a 2D mural on whatever seating they're already installing, or is that where you were saying it gets a little complicated?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I showed that as an example, but I'm thinking if we do the interior mural, it would just be a little bit like a simpler kind of 2D. The bench wouldn't necessarily be in this area.
Okay,
It wouldn't necessarily be.
Can you point out where the greenway is on that map so I get orientation out here?
Yeah, so it's, over here.
What?
Is that working? I can see.
I can't see any.
Oh,
Oh, I see it faintly. It's above the A.
It's a little.
okay.
So there's,
So that's where the gas station is, right there on the right, where the greenway entrance is off of our shoulder?
yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess that's my only hesitation with the covered bench is like,
Directly across.
if it's gonna be in visible proximity to the seating, the other seating that'll
Right.
be there, like, that it would be cohesive. you
Yeah.
know?
My only concern with the murals would be that it's gonna have such an overwhelming effect on the interior experience. Any architectural elements probably, and so so much depends, I think, on the institution of it. If it's a, killer mural that fits the space and works well with the architecture of the place, then it could be amazing. If it's not for any reason, then that will be permanently sort of a major feature of the library that may or may not work. So it feels maybe like that could be a question to think about.
Sure. Well, it would still go through the normal selection process where, for something like that, this size budget, we'd do an RFQ where people submit examples of previous work. And then they would submit a original proposal done to the specs of the library. And then that would be selected by our selection panel. And a lot of the folks on that panel would be from the library, the user group members. So there would be a lot of input from people involved in the space, selecting the art. So hopefully that wouldn't be a situation, but I get what you're saying, for
When
sure.
we see the actual architectural, like, colors and design of the inside, not just a nice white canvas, because that's beautiful, just all white, it's not so pop.
Right.
It's modern.
Right.
Like,
And
it's
that's-
almost like a museum, like you put up I think his concern is you put up this crazy, beautiful mural that clashes with the architectural space. You could be like, that's, and I understand, it will go through the process and that won't be an issue so much because just from my education of getting used to how these processes work, when the building could be completely, almost done and then the mural goes in, or is it being happened at the same time?
As far as when the mural is installed, yeah, that would be installed. I mean, the walls would have to be there.
But like-
It's a brand new building.
Like-
So the building doesn't exist yet.
No.
Okay.
Would you have opening day and then the murals would go up a month later, or would you, and just block it off so the artists could
No,
work?
ideally it would be done before the library opens.
I got
It would
you,
be
okay.
Part of the space, otherwise it would really disrupt
Yeah,
the operations of the library to do it afterwards. But they, obviously they'd have to be at the stage where, all the drywall is done, the priming's done, and
It
that's.
might be like the
Color
furniture
just
and finish.
Right, before they put some of the fixtures and things like
Yeah, they're gonna
that. So,
big brown
I
wood.
think it's built into the timeline.
if you visit, ACC Gov website and go to the SPLOST 2020, page, check out the East Side, Library, it's Project 25. There's it'll show you the designs. They're still doing, kind of public feedback for the interior, but you can see they actually show sort of little mood boards for the interior colors and things. They're pretty neutral,
Yeah,
not neutral. I call them like non-neutral neutrals. It's like, kind of medium blue and kind of mustardy colors and maroon and things that are like not super bold colors, but not just beige.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of things could work in this space. But yeah, it would obviously through the selection process, I think, they'd be able to find something that works well with the space and we'll already have an understanding of what the interior is gonna look like by that point. They would have probably made those decisions and that would be something that I would present to the selection panel so they have a good idea of what this space is gonna look like.
And with the existence of the murals, is that kind of part of the architectural design? Is that incorporated into their plan for the interior of the
I
building?
mean, we're working with the design team on the placement of the art, so this is something that the design team, the designers of the space have suggested would be a good place to put the art.
Yeah.
Any other questions, thoughts? So once we determine the type of art and the site for art, that will go to the mayor and commission for approval. And even though it's still a lot of time before this building is built, when we're ready to do a call for art, we'll be able to do that and then go from there with the selection.
good question. Just, when we talk about murals, does it always have to be a painted mural? Just coming from a photo background, not for me, of course, but like, if someone did a rendering of a photograph, like, not AI, but just say a composite of a photograph, and they wanted to have that photograph canvas and then mount it on that wall. Would that be something that would actually be put into a proposal? Like, I'm not a proposal, but could be submitted to something like that?
Sure,
I'm just curious.
yeah. I mean, they'd have to be able to, get it reproduced and get it installed, just like any.
Yeah, part of their budget and getting installed, okay. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think some of the challenge with a photograph is that the materiality of I don't know, because I don't know that much about like how you do where we've advanced with printing, but the work is supposed to last 20 years, 25, so that's, so if it's exposed to sunlight,
And a lot of sunlight coming into that building.
that's, paint, that's why we have specific paint, because it lasts really
Yeah,
long.
UV protection, everything.
Yeah, but actually, this building isn't gonna get as much sun. I mean, I know it's a lot of windows, but the windows are treated, otherwise it would,
Yeah.
potentially be damaging to the books and other things in there. So, you're not just gonna be baking when you're sitting in there.
Right.
So hopefully that will mitigate some of the fading.
I'm curious.
But yeah, that's it.
I'm doing a piece for a cancer center right now that's 6 feet by 17 feet, commission piece, and they're gonna just put the entire ceiling of a nature center. So I guess when the people are in their chemotherapy and they're leaning back, they're just looking up at a sky with trees, and it hasn't gone through completely yet, but I was just like, I don't have to print it, and I'm just providing the image in the file for them.
Yeah.
Yes, and we
I
would
was like,
do some projects like
I
that.
just thought it was interesting.
This would be a situation where if that was how the artist wanted to proceed, they would have to do all that installation,
I mean,
so contract it out.
Installation would be thousands of dollars.
Sure.
But there are some advantages, like even with like JR's work in France or something, the way those kind of printed portraits, you do have the advantage of predictability a little bit. I think the potential shortcoming with mural, of course, the selection panels can do a lot and find amazing artists to work with and do a lot to ensure that it fits the space. The only risk is that there is just to some extent with murals, you don't know entirely what you're going to get until it's actually done. There's some leap of faith that's required there. And it is just by its nature a little bit of a hit or miss process. It usually hits, sometimes it misses, even despite best of intentions. And if you miss on a wall on a building in downtown, it's a wall on a building in downtown. If you miss on the Brin Public Art Library at the east side, this gorgeous building, you miss big. If it's the interior. And so I think that would just, it's more of, there's just like a little bit of mistake there. That's kind of just part of it.
Make sure you read the selection panel.
Yeah.
Well, the art that's selected is what's expected to go on the building.
Yeah.
It's not like we hire an artist and then they just do something completely different than what we, contract them to do. Looking at our most recent murals, they all look exactly like what was proposed.
And they're on that.
Yeah, and that's, they're contracted to do that. And, so I just want to make that very clear. It's really not as big of a crapshoot as you make it out to be. Honestly, y'all have seen our recent murals. They look exactly like their mock-ups. Shockingly like their mock-ups. Yeah. 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 The one
inside the arena.
Uh,
I was just thinking, amazing.
Gigantic.
And it looks exactly,
That's
looks exactly like the rendering.
Yeah.
And he just gets up there and free hands it. I mean, he's using reference points, but still.
Yeah.
He said, "Well, did you use it? Do I push the button?" He's like, "No, I use my finger." I was like, "Your hand would just fall apart every single day."
Right?
He's like, well, I looked at his Instagram page and he's done many big walls. I guess that hand is just
Strong.
strong. You're not gonna use that hand when you're 60, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, any art that we contract, any changes that are made, they're all documented, they're all approved. So just so everyone knows, it's, we take your mock-up and we staple it to your contract, so. You're supposed to make this thing. And if you don't make this thing and we didn't tell you to make something else, then, that's.
You're giving
yeah.
the money back.
Yeah, essentially, so, but yeah, so, any other questions about the library? Okay, and we have an update of the public art master plan from Todd. Hey, Todd. Do you want, actually, do you want me to just put your, presentation up on my big screen here?
If you have it, that would be great. Yeah,
Is it just the one you emailed to me?
that's right.
Let me send it to Stephanie real quick. All right, we're getting it pulled up for you, Todd. Just a second. You can leave it, no, leave it in. And just exit out of that. And I'll send this to you. Email.
Todd, hi, this is Madhuri.
Hello.
Do you mind sharing it on screen
Hi,
so that everybody who is watching live can see your presentation too?
we
I
have,
don't mind. Hello.
Modern, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. We have different computers because I have one running the Apple and one running the. You want me to forward it to her real quick? Yeah. I'll forward it to you. Audrey.
Okay.
We try to do both on the same laptop. Weird things happen. We get like a weird lag.
So I don't have to share.
No, you don't. I have it up on the screen. So we're on the title page. Can you see?
Unfortunately, I cannot see it now.
That's the problem.
Hey, I'm in the public and I can't see it. There must be something going on here.
Can share it on both. I wonder if that'll work. 1 second. I need to. Okay. Can everybody see now?
Yep, I can
I
see.
can see it.
I have to remember to advance both of these.
Okay. Well, hello everybody. I can't really see you all, but I will say nice to see you all. I see this tiny little band of a table here. And I'm really enjoyed listening to the conversation about the library, by the way. When you get to commission public art for a library, it's a really special thing.
Mhm.
I'm really looking forward to see what you can do with that. Hope you can find more money. 60,000 is a good amount, but it should be a great project. Anyway, over the month of February, I was filling up Stephanie and Tatiana's mailboxes, email box with reports and research reports and things that I had been learning and finding and sort of pulling together a lot of the information that will kind of form the background for what goes into the plan. And Tatiana asked me to update you today as well. So they have a lot more information and more documents than I'm able to show today or even talk about. But what I'd like to do is quickly go over 5 things to show you a list of folks I've interviewed so far, to show you something that I did to try to analyze what the project load is for the public art team, which means Tatiana. I drafted a first outline of what the plan could look like. I moved forward and began to organize ideas about what the key recommendations in the plan could be. And then I laid a game plan for moving this to completion. And so I'd like to go over all those things quickly with you today. Um, I don't know, Tatiana or Stephanie, you want to say anything else before I proceed, or just want to jump in?
Just jump in. I'm good.
Just to contextualize things, last time there was a question about like, you know, basically like, what's this got to do with us kind of thing, which I hear you and I understand that a lot of it is things that are, you know, dealing with some of our operational challenges and workload challenges and things like that. But, you know, for us, it's really important that we are transparent with you all in this process because, you know, eventually we're going to bring this to the mayor and commission, and we want to do so with your recommendation, which is really important. We want to make sure that you understand kind of the bigger picture of everything and how all this kind of fits in. So a lot of it, while it may not, you know, necessarily be your direct work, as our advocates and as our advisory team, it's kind of important for you to know sort of all of the challenges that we're dealing with, and all the things that we're trying to improve upon. And so you're all a part of that, even though you're not necessarily doing all the nuts and bolts of everything. Does that kind of make sense? All right, Todd, take it away.
Okay, I'll add to that too. This ultimately the public art plan, any public art plan's goal is to help a community create the public art it wants to have, right? That's why we're doing that, and that's actually what you're doing too. That's what you just spent the last hour, 20 minutes talking about the library. So what kind of public art in this place will um, be what our community wants to see, and so the plan tries to do that too. So you'll see as I talk and as you know, there's a extraordinary circumstance with the amount of work that has to be done. So a lot of what this plan will focus on is how to unscramble this, but ultimately the goal is how to get the staff and the ACAC and the folks you work with in Athens-Clarke County to a point where you do have more liberty to kind of think more big picture um, about the kinds of projects that um, folks in Athens are interested in seeing. So it ultimately does have a lot to do with what you do, and you already are just some pretty subject matter experts in what goes on. So there's all different ways you can kind of contribute. Interviews are one of the methods of research, and I spent a lot of time in December, January, February doing interviews, and so I just wanted to, next slide, show a quick list of those. We are focusing a lot on, this is a very focused and limited type of work at this point, so we focused a lot on people who work in different offices in ACC government, as well as people who've engaged with the program directly, either as panelists, members, or artists. I have one more artist I want to talk to. But by and large, this round of conversations is finished. However, these indicate that there need to be some follow-up conversations, in particular with Capital Projects, whose new director has a lot of insight into what's going on with public art, continuing working in conversations with the planning department. And then, though we haven't talked to any other leadership from leisure services besides Stephanie, there are a couple of rungs up the ladder in leisure services leadership and in the manager's office as well, who we will who we will connect with a little bit later in the process when we have a clearer idea of what we're going to be presenting. So there's still more to come. Next slide. I think we all know that there's an extraordinary number of projects on your plate. But I just felt, at least for my own purposes, I wanted to try to visualize or get a sense of what that really is and compare it to what I know is the kind of workload that public art project managers carry. So next slide. This is a screenshot from my Excel spreadsheet I made where I entered all of the SPLOST projects ongoing or projected, did my best to estimate when they would occur. The SPLOST office, I used as my data source the tracking that the SPLOST office has. They actually have a huge spreadsheet, which is their estimate of when projects will begin and when they'll end and so forth. And I started with that and then added in information from Tatiana. So this is not an exact document. That's why you actually can't read it very clearly, though Tatiana and Stephanie have it. But it was meant for me just to get a grasp of the order of magnitude, so to speak. So essentially, you can look on the left and see how many projects the public art program is managing in a given year. Now, that doesn't mean all at one time. Like 2025 includes some of the things that Tatiana's wrapping up at the Classic Center, right? And some things that will be starting. So they're not all, it's not 25 all year long, but within the course of the year, more or less 25 projects. And that's going to continue for the next 3 years, 25, 26, 27. That's going to be the workload. If anything, given the way SPLOST works, it's more likely that projects will slow down rather than accelerate. So I would pretty much expect that, you know, although the numbers in 26 and 27 might decrease a little bit, the numbers in 28, 29 will probably go up. And that doesn't even count for any new SPLOST cycles, of which 1 or 2 are being planned. Now, the other public art programs I work with, a public art manager might work with 8 to 12 projects a year. I'm just going to stop there. 8 to 12 projects a year. And I would say that, you know, the scale and size of the projects you all do are maybe on average a little smaller, but not unusually different from what other public art programs do. And in some ways, it doesn't matter. A project is project. You still have to go to the mayor and commission for certain things. You still have to write a contract. You still have to pick an artist. I mean, a lot of the tasks you have to do in a project are the tasks you have to do no matter how big the project is. So it is an extraordinary workload. And I will say, as I always do, for every sense I get is that I'll just say her name, Tatiana, does them with an extraordinary level of professionalism. So it's the volume of work that is this documents to me the issues that you have. And so you'll see in a minute, a lot of the initial ideas are just about how do you unscramble this, but here it is in Excel. And like if you see in Excel, it's got to be true. At least that's
Oh, that's fast. Excellent.
at least you can kind of grasp it a little better. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So I guess what I'd like to talk about for a minute now is an outline of the plan, which is really sort of a suggestion of the topics the plan might cover. Now, I haven't really had a lot of back and forth with Stephanie and Tatiana about this, and so there's a lot of room for maneuvering, but here's what I'm thinking at the moment. Next slide. I think we need to begin with sort of an introduction about what's happened since the last plan and what's new in this plan, just sort of to bring people up to speed and give them a sense of what's going to happen. A public art plan, like I just said a minute ago to you, always talks about what this community want to accomplish with public art. Now, we haven't done public outreach as comprehensively as we did the first time around. That wasn't in the scope that we worked out. But I don't really get a sense that the big ideas that drove Athens to embrace public art have changed. If you go back and read the public art master plan, I think those ideas, from everything I sense, are still valid. And so, you know, I'd encourage you all to take a look at that plan and what it says public art is about in Athens. And if you kind of feel like, hey, that's actually not true, let us know. But at the moment, I think it is. And um, I may be being simplifying things about this, but what sticks in my head is, Athens has a special spirit, and that the idea was that public art should reflect that spirit. Public art should look the way Athens feels. That's right there in the plan, and um, I still think that's a really good aspiration. I mean, I'm just thinking about what Tatiana reported about the parade on Saturday and how artists were commissioned to kind of create things that are in the spirit of that fun event the community pulls together for. So anyway, that's the next section of the plan. Next slide, please. The plan really, because it's the bulk of the work you do, needs to focus on SPLOST and T-SPLOST. So I think the plan needs to capture a description of the pipeline of projects that we see now because of the SPLOSTs that are in place. So we kind of know what's coming down the pike. It should discuss strategies for managing the project flow, and I'll talk a bit about that in a minute. But I also think there could be ways to reimagine the SPLOST project process in the future. And you can't do this work that I do unless you're an optimist. And I've had some really interesting conversations with the person who runs the capital projects office, whose whole job is to sort of think about how SPLOST can work better. And I feel he has a really, if not direct, at least intuitive understanding of the challenges the public art program is facing. And because of the amount of work there is. And I think he would be I'm thinking he would be a great advocate for imagining other kinds of processes that could help things move along better. So anyway, that would be the next section of the plan. And then I think the plan would talk about initiatives beyond SPLOST, that once the program gets on a better footing workflow wise, what else could you take on? And some things are mentioned in the previous plan, the art walk and cultural trail, but there are other things too, like ideas like cooperating with agencies on public art projects that are related to their missions but not necessarily SPLOST project. Actually, I think Linen Town is sort of a example of that. Like, that is a very mission focused project, but it's not a SPLOST project. There are probably a lot of other collaborations like that out there. I know that Tatiana prepared for you all sometime back a community-based proposal process that could be on the table. And one idea I think worth considering is whether there could be, from some other funding source, a signature temporary project. Whether it's the things you do now, like say for the Firefly Parade or the Lantern Parade, or maybe something different. Anyway, SPLOST recommendations and then future initiatives. Next slide. As in most communities now, supporting artists in the community is a really important topic. The ACAC and the staff have already spent a lot of time with this, through the programs you've supported. And so the plan should include some recommendations for that. I think that one of the things to think more deeply about is not just thinking about how to support the art community in general or how to support uh, people interested in public art, but actually to focus on how to support artists who have commissions from the ACAC, who are actually doing the sculptures and the murals and might need support getting their projects done, which in turn could build their capacity, but also relieve some of the workload that the staff has. The next section would be about general policy updates, just things that maybe weren't in the first plan or need to be updated from the first plan. Criteria for projects that aren't specifically related to SPLOST. That's something that was, Stephanie and Tatiana asked me to do when the when we all started. You guys have done terrific research into conservation and maintenance practices. But there should be maybe another level of turning that into like ongoing protocols that you use. And then making sure the relocation, removal, deaccessioning, those types of things meet your needs. Next slide. And then finally, although this was not and is not a key priority for this plan, um, um, it is a good idea to revisit the part of the old plan that's about public art in planning and development. The plan you have now has a sort of aspirational percent for art policy. It's not like an official statement, but it says anything that that ACC does, government does downtown ought to include public art. Informally, the DDA includes public art in some of the things it does, but that hasn't really stretched to what happens in private development. There are I think there's a lot of openness and willingness in the planning department, I don't think it's possible to require developers, but to create a structure where developers have more incentives for including public art. Those could occur through how meeting urban design requirements with public art, through community benefit agreements, and through which are increasingly negotiated, and through plan development processes like like for around the mall, for example. So I've had a number of conversations with them and also with the economic development people who are managing a financial tool called a tax allocation district, to kind of get a sense of where the levers are, where you could actually insert yourself and say, hey, maybe you should consider public art. And I think there's willingness all around. I mean, again, in Georgia, you can't compel developers, but you can certainly set the table. Uh, and so that will be the section of the plan, is a little more detail about how to do that, because you have a couple of big areas of the city that, the next 5 or 10 years might really change a lot, like especially like around the mall area. So that would be the last. I think that's the last section. So right now, that is what I'm thinking the plan could cover. Big picture, discussion of how to improve the SPLOST process, discussion of other opportunities, general policies and procedures to improve or update, and updating the section about public art and private development. So the next thing I'd like to talk about is what some of the recommendations are that I have pitched, shall we say, to Stephanie and Tatiana. And I have to say that we haven't had a conversation about these, so this is just my thinking, but there's plenty more conversation to be had. And I've expressed admiration for Tatiana's program management capabilities. I also think Stephanie is a real wizard at the kind of intricacies of the policies. So I expect when we dig in, Tatiana and Stephanie will have a lot to say about how to orient or recalibrate these things. So next slide. First so these recommendations are kind of organized in terms of urgency, and I think I said this to you before, that feels like the right way to organize recommendations for Athens right now. So what's most urgent is to address the immediate workload. And actually, I think that most of the innovations that could be brought to bear, Stephanie and Tatiana have already thought of. And so it's mostly a matter of kind of calling those out and kind of finding more opportunities for doing those things. The last bullet, though, is something new, which is to see if there are ways that either projects or tasks that public art staff do now could be assigned to consultants, which at least is theoretically possible, or even part-time staff. And again, here's the optimist part of me. But when I talked to the director of the Capital Projects Office, they actually do have funding to provide project management support for the SPOS program overall. And it may be possible that there could be support external to your own funds for additional like part-time stuff. So that's something we all have to explore. Next slide. Finding better ways to deliver projects largely within the SPLOST model. And I think here's where the new capital projects manager will, at least at a global level, is trying to address things he sees throughout the SPLOST system. But a couple of things that we can talk about more are to talk different, or to explore additional ways to define project outcomes. Does every, for example, every project have to be a sculpture or a mural? Can it be a photography installation, or things that might be easier to commission or achieve? Explore ways of identifying project opportunities earlier. I was listening really carefully, Tatiana, when you were talking about the library project today and how you kind of went about doing a lot of really early research to try to figure out what the scope of the project will be long before the building is being built. I think that kind of early action is sort of what I'm thinking about here. Um, it's I'm really hopeful everything you said about the architects is true, that they're working with you to find locations, but that early coordination will make things move more quickly. And there may be other ways and other kinds of projects to start that conversation even earlier. I already mentioned the idea of providing targeted technical assistance for artists who are commissioned to do projects, to help them with problems that they sometimes have with maybe the engineering of things, for example. Um, I think that although I don't think this is a workload problem, I do think that a lot of the SPLOS projects I've seen could probably benefit from um, additional funding. So the budget's a little bigger, they could be built more robustly. There could be more money to support the artist's work. Reducing barriers to selection panel participation. This is something would be a really good topic for this group to talk about, is how can more people be recruited to be on panels and take part in panels, particularly to reflect community voices as strongly as possible. And then reducing artists' challenges for getting insurance. There may be some ways to do that, but that doesn't change the SPLOST model. That just sort of tries to address some of the roadblocks or stumbling blocks that are experienced. Next slide. So then update policies and procedures. I think a really strong consideration is to think about whether you would benefit from having more flexible funding in future SPLOS and less project direct funding. So instead of having a lot of little pools of money spread over different projects, to see if that money might be consolidated like it was in Project 21. That gives you more flexibility about how much to put where. I think a key question that precipitates that we should all consider is: are you better off doing fewer big projects or more small projects? Knowing that, like I said earlier, no matter how big a project is, it requires a certain amount of work. The next two bullets I've already mentioned. The next one is, because of the volume of projects and the rush of work, the annual plan has not been as strategic a tool as the master plan envisioned, and it makes sense where you are now. But in the long run, an annual plan, particularly a plan that looks like ahead several years, can be a really important strategic tool for making decisions about fair application of projects and a mix of projects, and it kind of puts you more in the driver's seat. I also mentioned about updating protocols. So there's a range of policies and procedures. And then finally, last slide on this group. And this is where we actually want to get to, is like, what are other initiatives you could take on when your resources allow it? I mentioned a number of these things: non-SPOS projects, the community-based proposal process. The last master plan recommended a temporary sculpture exhibition, which might be worth reconsidering, and then a signature temporary project to allow artists to explore new ideas. And this is something, when we have more time, we can talk about in a little more depth. But I think it's an idea that kind of plays really well to the art community that I see in Athens. Next slide. Finally, last topic, next steps. Go ahead to the next slide. So my next step really is to review the things that I sent a couple weeks ago with Tatiana and Stephanie, and then to figure out ways that you all can kind of comment on the work where it is right now. I think, as I said earlier, we have to do a range of follow-up interviews with some of the people, particularly people in the SPOST and the Capital Projects Office, and then begin to draft the plan. So if we can move in a kind of in a sort of disciplined pace, hopefully next month I can submit a draft plan, which would sort of go through a review with the staff, with you, with other stakeholders. After that, it's hard to put time predictions on things because it sort of just depends on how long each previous step takes. But after that, we would submit a revised plan. Again, we review with staff and the commission, and then that would be the time to go to the leadership of the like the manager's office, for example, and then a final draft would be submitted to the mayor and commission. So the process, I think Tatiana used the word transparency. While the last months have been spent doing research and analysis, it's about to become something where we'll be presenting ideas, presenting recommendations, presenting drafts. So it will be a lot more of a visible process. I will stop there. With thanks to you for kind of sitting and listening to that long presentation. And Tatiana, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Todd, and thanks for saying such nice things. I appreciate it. Does anyone have questions or anything for Todd?
I've got a couple questions.
Sure.
Hey, Todd, thank you so much. That was an incredible presentation. You've done so much amazing work with all of this. And this is Jamie speaking. I just had two questions, and they're kind of related. One is, you mentioned a few things in this draft that were relics of the original master plan in 2017. So like the downtown percent initiative or sort of art walk, some things like that. What was it that stood in the way of those things getting accomplished the first time around? And how can we make sure that they've got a better chance of success this time? And also to that end, how did we get, for instance, from a recommendation in the last master plan to kind of stick to fewer projects, but now we are kind of over the sort of general sort of average for what cities are taking on. How did that happen? And also, who's responsible for kind of overseeing this kind of thing and making, keeping track of, are we sticking to the guidelines we set out in the master plan? Are we on track to accomplish our goals? And then I guess the other big question is related to that. It's just, is the master plan this time around, is it clarifying the role of the ACAC to any extent? The last master plan was almost entirely oriented around action items for the ACAC. It seems the ACAC's role has changed somewhat since that plan was revisited, was drafted. Is there a process of sort of writing down somewhere what the role is of the ACAC going forward?
Oh, I should have been writing those down. So in terms of the art walk, those types of ideas, it's probably better for me to ask Tatiana or Stephanie to talk about those things. However, I will say the great big accomplishment of the last plan, though, it took a while was to get a staff person. Previously, ACAC was a volunteer group. And if you can imagine you all, without Stephanie and Tatiana doing these 27 projects, that was the great accomplishment. I mean, it was a very hands-on commission before.
There weren't that
They
many.
would just do like one at a time.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
the difference.
So that was the big accomplishment. So I just don't want to like give you the impression, oh, there were a lot of things not accomplished. There's one like super big thing accomplished. I again sort of I think the SPLOST process has I actually just don't think the ACC in general kind of anticipated once they started rolling out. I mean, I think when we did the plan, there was one SPLOST that was finishing, another two that were launching. That was it. And the one that had was underway. It started in 2010, and we did this plan, what, in 2015, 2017, something like that. And so, it seemed pretty manageable. But when the new splash started rolling out, I think not just public art, but I think the whole ACC got overwhelmed by it. That's why they've hired a capital projects manager now to kind of unscramble everything. So I think that the reason there's this overwhelmingness going on is really more about external circumstances. And there's a little quirk, by the way, in the SPLOST that actually winds up having a lot of impact on all this, which is that the SPLOST, you generate the money from a sales tax, right? That's what pays for all these projects. In most communities, that money is capitalized, which means the locality will float bonds to pay for the projects, right? And that gives them a lot of control over when they do things. They float the bonds, they can decide when they're going to do that, when they're going to do things, and they can manage the workflow and other things based on when they issue the bonds. It's a little harder in Athens because it's pay as you go. The projects don't come along until the sales tax comes in, and so they speed up and they slow down. And I guess I've just observed that you don't seem to have as much control over things, and the public art program is at the bottom of the food chain when it comes to that. Like no one's going to slow a project down, so Tatiana's workload's more realistic, right? They'll expand their contract with the project managers who manage the projects, but they won't expand the public art capacity. So a lot of external things shape these pressures that really y'all don't have much to do with, but you're in a much better position now than you were before because you have a staff person at least. Um, you know, whereas originally the mayor and commission contemplated this being run by volunteers. So, as to the art walk, I'll let Tatiana or Stephanie, do you have any observations about how that and then I think we had two recommendations to plan. One was the sort of the permanent art walk that went like from Linden House to downtown. And then there's a temporary art, also kind of a parallel idea for temporary art downtown. Do you guys have any insights on that?
Sure. The Jackson Street Art Walk is a SPLOST project. It's pretty low on the SPLOST 2020 list. And when it was, I guess, conceived, it was conceived basically to just build out the infrastructure. It wasn't going to include, there wasn't enough funding for the actual art itself, and there were some other things that were, dreamed up for that to have like studio spaces and other things. There is not enough money in that project budget to do all of those things. So once that project hits, it would probably just be like a phase one of that project. I mean, there's really just not enough funding in that project fund to really fill out the whole vision for that. Kind of similarly with temporary art, the majority of our funding is for permanent things. As far as what we have to fund temporary art, we just have our operating budget each year. And quite frankly, having to install a temporary exhibit within the confines of a fiscal year. I can't even imagine how that would work. That's just not something we have the resources and staff to do anything like that at this time. I'm not sure exactly how we would do it, but we would have to have separate funding, and I don't think it could be, tied to start to finish within a fiscal year. There, with the Jackson Street Art Walk, I know there was, maybe some desire to do some grants or something to support the rest of it, but I mean, honestly, with all of our projects, to also be, seeking out grants on top of doing all these projects, there's just not enough humans to do all that. So that's why a lot of the things in Todd's update for the plan are sort of aspirational. I mean, a lot of things in the original plan were aspirational. We didn't even have a staff person then. So, we have a lot of big dreams and big ideas, and certainly, no shortage of them. I want all those things too. We just don't have enough humans that work on this. And you have to remember that, fitting this into a government budget, when we're talking about, we don't have enough resources for this and that and the other, if you're wanting to actually increase your resources for public art, that's going to be kind of a hard sell in the grand scheme of things, even in our community that loves art and wants to support it. But at the end of the day, it takes a lot of money and staff to really do it the way we want to do it. And sometimes we just have to say, well, unless we're going to support it this way, we can't have it,
SPOS can divert it anyway. Like, instead of doing 25, you did 20 projects. You took that other money that was for art. I mean, it would be unfortunate, but
yeah, you can't just.
And hire a team for you and take some of this workload off?
No, that's no. And the same thing with like even consolidating, Todd mentioned Project 21. That was a pool of money in the original SPLOS, but there were also individual SPLOS project budgets still. There was just that extra money that was to be used to supplement those other projects. But as far as how the funding works, the money from that project has to be on that project site. So, yeah, so saying like, oh, we're gonna take the money from over here, I mean, I wish we could do
Doesn't work
that,
that way.
but it just doesn't work
I
that way.
think so.
It has to do with the ordinance and the legal,
So
there's
that
a-
can't happen. That can't happen now, but it may be possible to rewrite that in future SPOS issues. Maybe not even the next one. It's probably too late, the one they're taking proposals for. But in the long run, it could be possible to reorganize how that works, especially because the problems the public art program is experiencing with project management are sort of being experienced with other projects, right? And so there's an incentive to try and think about a different SPOS delivery system that you all could benefit from.
All of that totally makes sense. I guess my question is a little bit more general. So those are great updates of our walk and everything that all totally makes sense. I guess in a bigger picture procedural sense, the original master plan, it did contemplate some of those budgeting and staffing issues. I think there was a part-time staffer at the time, and the plan suggested.
that was me.
Perfect. And yeah, that makes sense. And the plan suggested, in order to accomplish this master plan, we should make someone full-time. So it contemplated that. And it also had a whole section sort of dedicated to, here are all the things that ACAC should be doing in order to raise more money, in order to lobby the government, in order to establish public-private partnerships, in order to work with various grant-making organizations. So that was all part of it. And so I guess the question is, so we had these aspirations. We also had, listed in the 2017 master plan, ways we could get there and ways that ACAC could help that. And so my question, I guess, is a bigger picture one. Who's keeping track of all of this stuff? Of what are our goals? Are we accomplishing our goals? That kind of thing. And what's the ACAC's role in that? Has the ACAC's role changed since 2017? And that's as much of a question for Tatiana. You know, because there so much of the 2017 master plan is directed toward all the things that ACAC should be doing. Should be establishing all these task forces, should be working with the planning committee, all kinds of stuff, some of which we do and a lot of which we don't. And we also don't spend a ton of time in the meetings sort of opening it up for discussion about any kind of big picture questions about what arts policy should be and stuff like that. And there are also things that are reiterated over and over in both the statutes that established ACAC and in the 2017 master plan about how ACAC is responsible for, you know, consulting on matters of cultural affairs in the city, literature, film, dramatic art, stuff like that, that we don't really get into much. And so even in the 2017 master plan, there was some ambiguity, I think, about what the ACAC's role was. It was sort of restated a handful of times within that master plan in slightly different ways. So I'm curious, has there been something that superseded that master plan since that's redefined the ACAC's role that I'm not aware of, beyond the bylaws and statute?
The ordinance and the attorney's office interpretation of the ordinance.
The ordinance that established ACAC would be done.
Yes.
But that's from back in 20.
Exactly.
Okay, but there's nothing new since then. There's that. And
Well, there's a staff member and, you know, we've had a lot of increased oversight and increased transparency. And there's a lot of things that really have to be done by staff members.
absolutely.
That, you know, we can't really have volunteers, you know, creating task forces and all of these things. Like the ACAC members can't actually create groups of other people. That was something that has come up.
But has that changed? So in the 2017 master plan, that is an authority that's given to the ACAC.
So the master plan is not an authority at
It's
all.
not.
It's
And
a
the mayor
recommendation.
commission did not, they did not like vote to make it an authority. So there's that.
But if that master plan was approved, but
It was accepted, not adopted.
Okay.
And that's the big difference because the American Commission is not beholden to anything that's in that public art master plan. It's like they read it and they appreciate it and they agree that these are things that can be like pursued, but they made no like stern financial commitment to doing that. That's the big difference.
fair enough. But the
Yeah.
ordinances that establish ACAC do give it a very broad remit across both public art and all matters of cultural life. And the fact that the public art master plan is drafted in that fashion and accepted and made all these recommendations for the ACAC to do, like establish task forces, would suggest, even in a legal sense, that the ACAC must have some kind of authority direction in that area.
They're not an authority in any way. They are an advisory group or an advisory group that advises the mayor and commission. Y'all are not an authority.
Well,
An authority is actually a different type of group. And I know it's semantics, but it does make a difference.
I wasn't saying it wasn't authority.
Like,
Certain-
because we do have groups that are an authority, like the Athens Downtown Development Authority, the Classic Center Authority, the Airport Authority. They have a lot more autonomy to do things, create task forces, things like that the ACAC does not.
Well, but in the 2017 master plan, clearly, that is what it's suggesting. So then the question is, why did we draft a master plan that suggested a bunch of authority, the ACAC to do a bunch of things that it can't do? And so are we doing anything differently in this iteration to clearly elucidate what the scope is in the ACAC? Because all what you're saying is totally reasonable and fair, I believe you, but it is very different from what's said in the 2017 master plan and what's said in the ordinance that established ACAC.
Which is why we hired Todd to update the public art master plan, because, this body operates differently than it did when that plan was originally
Right.
conceived. And that is why we hired Todd to help us both with like internal processes and reinterpreting what the role of this group is.
Right.
So that's what we're going next with.
Perfect, but that's exactly my question. So what I'm curious what Todd is doing and in consultation with what legal counsel in terms of updating clarifying that role is the AC.
Yeah, I think what Todd's done so far is done like a lot of the internal processes, because that helps us, that shows us what levers we actually can manipulate, and it's very restricted, like Tatiana's described, like what we're capable of doing with taxpayer dollars and transparent meetings and all those things, so we work within those confines, so that's what we're reiterating, looking at what's possible and how we work in concert with the rest of the government. And then from there, that helps us set the stage for what this group is capable of and can contribute and what that looks like, because it is different. When I came on this, or this group was all people volunteered. We had contracted with a part-time person to do some of the clerical work and just like the typing and managing, but people volunteered their time and did this work at home, making Excel spreadsheets and budgets and presenting. And that changed because it needed to change as the government has like evolved and decided different ways of operating, and, you know, laws get updated, they get reinterpreted. We're here living in that space, which is how, one of the early actions that the Cultural Affairs wanted to make was to advocate strongly for a full-time funded position. So I worked, you know, with that current board and within our internal mechanisms for how we create initiatives and add staff, which is quite frankly kind of hard to do. So we got one. I've asked for, I mean, we have other, you know, there's people ask every year in the budget request for additional staff, so.
Absolutely, thank goodness, and thank goodness.
Maybe can I throw an answer out, Stephanie?
Okay.
So I wanted to throw an answer out too. So one thing we're doing differently this time, or you know, I made a reference to Stephanie's sort of and Tatiana's as well grasp of the intricacies of these things. When we did the first plan, nobody had those. There was no one in Stephanie or Tatiana's position to help us navigate that. It was, you know, the chair helped us, but she didn't have the same kind of facilness with the intricacies of how the government works. So one thing we'll be doing is making sure we, like, as I said, towards the end of this process, talking more to the leisure. There are people in leisure services leadership who we haven't talked to yet, capital projects, and the manager's office. Part of what we're kind of waiting for is to see how the leadership of the manager's office shakes out, right? So I think we'll do more than we did last time with like lining the ducks up and making sure what's in the plan is not inconsistent with ACC, you know, overarching policies and procedures. I will say I'll take more personal responsibility. I don't think we've thought a whole lot yet about what the AC's role would be in all of this going forward, because we've been thinking mostly about these kind of very kind of bureaucratic navigational things. So, you know, it's a fair question, at least I think, to ask when all is said and done. When we get past those things, it could be worth a conversation. So that's why you haven't seen that reflected in what's been done to date. Let me ask you a question. I'm not asking this in an accusing kind of way, but how long have you been on the commission?
I've been on it for about 6 months.
Okay, so that's another thing. When I began this process, had been a lot of turnover in the ACAC, a lot of new members, and so I can see now that you've been there half a year, you're sort of beginning to kind of, you know, frame these kind of questions and kind of. I don't know that 6 months ago when we started, I think we were kind of waiting and expecting that the new members would have to spend some time getting acclimated to the ACAC. And they're watching projects work and how they flow and how the conversations work. So, so it may be a better time now to have a conversation like that than it was when we started.
I guess it's just if the ACAC's role has changed significantly since 2017, I think that should be written down somewhere and clarified. And if it's not, to your point of bringing on new members, it's a little hard for me to know what exactly my responsibilities are and what the board's responsibilities are if the actual responsibilities of the ACAC are appreciably different from what's written in the master plan, what's written in the ordinance, and what's written in the bylaws. And if there's some other body that of writing that's changed this, I would love to know, but I just don't know what it is. I'm genuinely just confused about it. I don't want to start any trouble.
No, I take the point that when this is finished, there should be more clarity on that. But I can't offer any more today. So that's a good point.
Any other questions for Todd? Thank you so much, Todd, for that.
Okay. Thank you all. And I'll be seeing you again very soon.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
I got to see him.
Oh, he's on the screen over there.
Yes.
Oh.
Oh, cheese bars. Did everyone sign? Okay,
Yes.
Great. All right. Francis is not here to do outreach.
I do have a question.
Sure.
On that topic. We had discussed at the last meeting, like tabling at the jury show, but I'm not sure if anyone is spearheading that or.
I haven't heard from Francis about it, but, you know, it's this Thursday, so I'm thinking no.
At 6 p.m.?
6 p.m. here.
Yes.
And yes, please attend. And come early too. Parking is always.
The Create Athens team is supposed to be here.
That's what it is. It's not us, it's creative.
Yeah.
I was about to get like, hey, clearing my time. Okay, so I still got a table.
Well, and it's not really tabling. It's me and you and Camille and Linda
Okay.
walking around and passing out some stuff for the
Okay.
Athens Creative
I'll
Circle.
still be here. It just might not be super.
Yeah. Well, there's 4 of us to take it on, so we'll take it as we need.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sarah, do you want?
Yes. Yeah, let's get to the part where we talk about anything going on in the community that we're a part of that is interesting to us. So like I just mentioned, Marissa and I and some other folks that are part of the Create Athens team are going to be here at the juried event on Thursday, promoting the Athens Creatives Directory. It's building capacity as time goes by. And we, when we meet again next week, we are thinking strategically about our plan to market, additional ways to market to our community for creatives to sign up and then for the community to know it exists. So that's what I'm up to.
A week from tomorrow, March is the Humanities Festival at UGA. So a week from tomorrow at Cine at 5:30 is Humanities Festival Trivia, which I am hosting. So come if you can, it's free. All are welcome. There's prizes. The first 4 answers are A, D, C, and B. Remember those, you have a head start.
Oh, thank you. And you got anything to follow around? Yeah, Lydia. Jamie, you got anything? Yeah. We've calmed down a good bit. For the jury show.
Yes, the jury show on Thursday. Also, next month is Poetry Month. Of course, you all know our poet laureate. She always does some extra programming during Poetry Month. I've arranged for her to read a poem for the Mayor Commission at their April regular session. That's April 1st. And so stay tuned. Those are on, those are live streamed on YouTube. So you can watch at home. You're welcome to come to the chamber at City Hall and watch in person if you like. But it's easy to just watch from home. And if you don't watch live, it's up there. You can watch it later. I'll make sure I send it out to everybody and give you a timestamp so you know when to turn in. She's also working with the folks in Whitwood Lightroom on some videos that we'll be sharing on YouTube, social media, whatever, of, her readings and musings and things. So
That is a good reminder. If y'all are not on the Lightrooms listserv, if you haven't been there, you should check it out. It's a very cool space, and they're starting to offer workshops for photography.
yeah, if you're not familiar with them, in area used. They have studios that can be used for audio and visual recording. Like, I guess the big thing is like podcasters record their
Equipment rental.
But yeah, they rent all kinds of equipment and like cameras and lights and things like that. So, it's on Anita Street next to Pumiu's restaurant. You know where that is?
Where that whole new hotel.
Yeah, where that fancy hotel, yeah, exactly. They're over in there.
Featured conference or.
Yeah.
And it's open, you can just stop in, like they're super cool. The owners have produced a bunch of films in Latin America. It's been very experienced.
Wait, it's called light.
So it's a great new resource for people that do any kind of audio or visual stuff.
Nice. All right, if no one has anything else, good. All right. Do you have a motion to end this meeting?
I move to end this meeting.
And Lydia, you second? Okay, we're good to end the meeting. We can go aye. Okay, thank you. It's